In a recent video, I talked about crowdsourcing design contests and explained that I believe you can learn a lot by entering or observing them. This is the first video of a new series we have been planning and working on for a while, which will analyze past crowdsourcing competitions from various platforms. The aim is to help you learn about graphic design and illustration by examining all kinds of submissions, from the winning entries and finalists to the less successful ones. In this first episode, we will be looking at a festival logo contest that was running on 99 Designs and got over 400 submissions. Join me to find out how the winner managed to secure the first place and whether it was really the best choice out of all of the entries. I have been planning for a long time to record these videos where I review contests on crowdsourcing sites. Now, this is one of many contests that I went through and had a look at all the entries, and I thought that you can learn a lot from not only the winning design but also many of the other entries. So I always say that learning the technical skills is important, but developing an eye to be able to judge when a design or logo in this case works and when it's lacking either in terms of quality or detail or original concept is just as crucial. So this is the real aim of this series that I'm doing, and hopefully you will be able to learn a lot from it. So here we can see the final winning design, and we can have a look at the other background version. And also the client actually asked to make sure that this will work well as a sticker that can be used on laptops. But to have a closer look at the competition itself, let me show you first of all the brief. So it says you need to illustrate a festival logo which is fun and playful. The name is Levels. And the secondary copy, Melbourne 2018, should also be incorporated. From the description, probably the most important thing is that this event is about computer programming, coding, and so the theme should be computers and internet. And of course, the industry is technology. But then there were additional comments from the client explaining that the logo should be fun, playful, and illustrated. That's very important. As an additional theme, anything to do with the word levels would be useful to be included, like stairs, direction, dimensions, and also, which we mentioned before, computers, nodes, wires, keys, and code is also good to be included. Important that the client specified that no plain text logos or word marks should be created. These will be declined immediately and not considered. The client also specified range of colors to choose from, but important to include the ultraviolet Pantone color of 2018. Now, as I understand, this was added later as a request from the client. It wasn't there in the beginning, so some of the entries you will see won't have that violet color in them, and that's not because the designers didn't read the brief properly, but because that was added later as a special request. Now, whenever you enter competitions, either on 99 Designs or other platforms, you should always make sure you read the brief really carefully. You can even take notes, but make sure you look at everything in the brief, including the comments on design inspirations. Now, these design inspirations, so all these logos, normally are recommended or suggested by 99 Designs to the client when they are creating the brief, and the client can add their own personal notes. And this client actually made really good notes. For example, on this first one, the client said it is a really good example of what we want, so that's spot on in a way. Then from the second one, the Meetup logo, the client said that they like how it connects together and how the word is styled. But that doesn't mean that they like the overall logo. So a good client would point out features of a design that they like, and then they would let the people entering the contest use those elements and then put them together into something new. So if you are a client, bear that in mind, that it's better guidance for a designer to get details highlighted from multiple designs instead of picking a few individual designs that are overall looking good. It just gives a bit more creative freedom and makes it more fun project to work on. So the client went on and continued explaining the things that they like. So we have a couple of additional comments here and examples. And then, like on all the other projects on 99 Designs, we also have the style attributes scales or parameters. So the logo they want should be more modern than classic. It should be more youthful and slightly bit more feminine, which is interesting. So even though it's coding, they didn't want to go with the cliche masculine designs. They want it to be slightly more feminine. But this is why 99 design attributes are so useful, because we can see that it's more feminine than masculine, but not completely on that extreme. So it's still a bit of both. What is obvious is that the client wants it to be more playful, more economic than luxurious. And when we have values in the middle, that basically means that the client is either not sure about it or maybe both can apply. So it's not a clear cut whether it should be geometric or organic and so on and so forth. Now, interesting fact that there were 409 design entries submitted for this competition, so a lot to choose from. Now, the way I'm going to do this video is that before we get to the final winning design and analyzing that, we will look at groups of entries. So I went ahead and collected them based on themes that I think are relevant. And notice that I added a code next to each of the logos. So for instance, on this page, we have 9 designs, and this is the first page. So that's why this first logo is A1. The main reason I included these codes is for you to make it easier to refer to any logos when you are commenting. And I really hope you will be using the comment section, because one of the ways that these reviews can work and we can learn more from them is for you to also take part. I am going to tell my opinion and my feedback on the whole competition and all the entries that I'm going to show you here, but I would really like you to take part and really share what you think. So going through all of these examples, you will be able to reference whichever logo you prefer or whichever logo you think could have been the winning design, or maybe even just say like maybe A6 is a logo where you really like the concept, but this is what should have been done to make that better, so on and so forth. So I just really hope that you will take your time and add some comments at the end of watching this video. And don't forget to use these reference codes that I mentioned. Now, this first page has a theme of logos that are, in my opinion, too corporate, too business-like, which actually goes against the playfulness that was requested by the client. So these are all typical IT or technology related logos. Even the color blue is very dominant here on these examples. And although there's some good ideas here, I think the main problem is that they don't really follow some of the main and important aspects of the brief. So as a designer, you can't ignore half of the brief and only follow another half of it. You have to make sure that you meet all the criteria. Otherwise, you don't stand a chance against so many other designers working on the same contest. It can be a really harsh way to learn, taking part in a crowdsourcing competition and failing, not being selected as a finalist or a winner. But this is a really good lesson that will teach you to really make sure you follow every single criteria in the brief. Now, if these were the only submissions I had to choose from, I would say A2 is probably the most clever one, because we have the caret signs used for the L's. So it still reads as levels, but it also works or acts like a code or syntax. Whoever is into coding would definitely recognize that. And the only downside of this is that this still is more of a word mark. So there's not much illustration in it. It's just purely type. Even though this is not an actual L, it's still a glyph or a character in that font. So this is a very smart logo, and it hits the mark on a lot of aspects, but then also it ignores a lot of other things that were required for this competition. Now, you might recall the meetup logo mentioned by the client and saying that the connection of the letters they liked. That is actually nicely executed here with the 2 E's and the 2 L's and even the S. So there's a lot of connected characters here. It's nicely executed, but again, it's a bit still too much like a word mark. And also, of course, not playful enough. Now, moving on to the second page, we have much more playful designs. But most of these, I feel, are a bit too playful. So you have to be really careful when you are following, again, a certain attribute that the client requested. If you put too much emphasis on one single attribute, even though it was really on one side of the scale or the other, you should still consider all the rest of the attributes. Don't get blindfolded and follow just one single aspect. Try to incorporate everything else as well. So on this page, B2 is probably still the closest to what the brief was about, which apart from being playful, it also includes a couple of interesting details that point or hints at what this logo is about or what this festival is about. So we can see the mouse there, for example. Again, the caret signs are showing up here in this logo, which can again hint at coding, but the rest of the logos tell nothing about technology or coding in general. On this page, I collected another set of playful logos, but in my opinion, these are closer to what the client wanted. So they are not only playful, but also they have some connection to technology, whether it's in their colors or illustrative elements. We can again see this nice interlocking of the characters that was mentioned by the client. Also subtle hints at coding, which I really like in this logo here at the bottom. The special characters used in coding showing up again both on these logos here, the wires and cables inside the characters on this example, and even the full name written with basically special characters. Now this is a little bit over the top here on the right, but still it's an interesting take and a unique idea. Now, although C5 and C8 doesn't really follow the brief, they are still really nice designs, nicely executed and stylish. I think especially here in this logo, having the layers for each of the characters creates that nice leveled design that the client was requesting. So it's also a quite trendy style in terms of like branding that is nicely incorporated. So it looks fresh, but also follows the brief. Now on this page we have 4 more complex designs. So the reason I separated them from the rest is because here we can see a lot of things going on. So while some of the previous examples were too simple, here we are on the completely other end or other extreme. We have loads of details compressed into each of them. Now these could work well for this brand or a festival, but generally I would say for a logo, there's a little bit too much going on here. Normally, I would consider these more of a composition, so almost like a poster or a badge than a logo. The client actually responded quite well to some of these designs because when you have a lot of elements, it's easier to please and make sure that you cover more of the things that the client asked. But none of these ended up winning, and I think one of the reasons is not because of their execution or creative concepts, but more like the fact that they have just a little bit too much going on, especially on the logo on the right, where we have even different styles like scribbles connected with isometric view and then different patterns and even clouds in the background. It's not just the amount of stuff, but also the amount of styles combined together that makes it a little bit over the top. Now moving on, we are getting closer to the final winning design and the style of that design. Here we have a couple of entries that are getting really close, and the client was really highly rating these because there's a lot of the elements from the brief that we can see. For instance, this logo here on the right, where we have things stacked on top of each other, but we even have the little stairs designed within one of the letters. Or this logo where we again have the stairs used for each of these parts of the text. And however it's more abstract, it still clearly reads as levels, which is great. One of the reasons this design here on the right wasn't selected, I think, is because, again, the designer didn't really follow the brief, and instead of going towards IT and technology, this is more science-based, and you shouldn't generalize. So science and technology is not the same thing. Although it's close, it's not the same thing. Make sure you pay attention to these things. Whenever a client uses a term or keyword, you really should pay attention to use elements that would apply to that area. So while the design on the right was more science, this one here in the middle actually uses code. hidden in parts of the design, which is quite cool. And it is an interesting abstract 3D design, but I feel like this is a little bit too complex and hard to read compared to the other ones. So the execution is nice, there's some really nice ideas, also good colors chosen, but it's just a little bit over the top. So when you're doing a bit more abstract design, you should still keep it in mind that the logo needs to read well. And also you want to avoid including elements that won't really work well in print, especially as a sticker. So these construction lines here, although they look cool, again, as a composition or badge, this would be fine. But as part of a logo, this is too small and it's unnecessary to go down to that small detail level. Now, before we move on to the final winning design, here's a few more examples I wanted to point out where the underlying concepts and compositions work well, but certain aspects are not in place. For example, here on the left, we have a very bad background color choice. If this was white or black, that would already help to showcase the logo. But also, I feel like there's too much clashing colors placed next to each other, like green and yellow being really close. Also, too much of a variety of colors, no cohesive underlying theme. So if this logo got a better color selection, I think this could be much nicer than the way it looks at the moment. Color is not the only thing that can ruin a logo. There's another really nice example here, F2, which has a lot of smart and creative ideas and details. But the problem with this is there's just too much tiny elements that wouldn't really work well in a logo. So what you need to keep in mind, the logos you normally have to work in small scale. So whenever you're designing them, make sure you zoom out. And if you can see still all the details that you added from a distance, then it works. But in this case, I'm pretty sure that all of these tiny details wouldn't really read well, like that @ sign behind the letter definitely would be lost, especially because of the contrast or lack of contrast that we can see there on the actual red circle and the @ sign on it. But now that we've seen a couple of other entries from other designers, we finally got to the winning design, which I think definitely deserved to be the winner. This artist or designer, Asael Varas, submitted 15 designs for this competition, and most of them look very similar. So the original concept was quite close to the end result, although the end result has been refined a lot. And I'm sure there was communication back and forth between the designer and the client to get to this result that we can see here. And generally what I can see is that this designer read and understood the brief clearly and came up with a very nice, unique and playful logo that still has elements of technology and the theme of levels or stairs. So here we can see the evolution on the left, the first entry from the designer submitted for this contest. And then the second one is almost exactly the same as what we can see in the final result, apart from some changes on the patterns and the colors. What I really like on this final design is how it is interlocking the letters in 3D without affecting the readability. So you can see how L wraps around the letter E, then we have V joining into S, and even the L being connected down to letter L with this cable. So remember when I said small details you should only use if it reads from a distance and not to overdo and add too much elements. I think this is a great example. Using a single cable, which refers to technology, is better than adding lots of cables all around the logo. It would have been overcooked. Another nice touch is using syntax or code as one of the patterns on these letters. Again, more subtle, and it's a secondary read, so you might not notice it the first time you look at it, but whoever is attending this festival most likely will recognize it and will appreciate it. Now here is again the final presentation that was submitted by the designer and which was selected as the winning design. So again, the designer, following the brief really well, included a nice white and dark background version, and also showcasing in a mock-up how it could look like as a sticker. So these are all again really nicely presented to a very high standard, it's polished and it's professional. But most importantly, it is clearly following and understanding the brief. And since we talked about the designer, I wanted to show his account. So he actually won 77 contests so far at the time of recording this video. But he also worked on 195 one-to-one projects. That's one of the coolest things on 99 Design, that you can actually continue working with clients. So if you win a competition, you can easily continue working with that client and continue more on a freelancer level, where the client is clearly trusting you to be able to deliver work similarly to the previous projects that you completed. And another statistic that is also crucial when we look at someone's account is that this designer has 50 repeat clients. So a lot of the clients he worked with actually came back and asked him to work on multiple projects. Building that trust and connection with your clients as a freelance designer is one of the most important things. And I love the fact that 99 Design is a platform that enables you to do that. So I hope you found this review interesting, and of course if you want to check out all the entries, you can find a link to the contest in the description below. Don't forget that this contest is closed, so there was obviously a winner selected, so it's not active anymore, but because it was an open contest and not a blind one, you can actually see most of the submissions, apart from the ones that were withdrawn by the designers. Don't forget to comment and maybe tell us which one was your actual favorite design, if you think there was one of them better than selected winning design. And don't forget to also use the codes that I had in this presentation if you are referring to them. If you want to quickly find each of the pages that I went through in this review, we have a time code in the description below, so you can easily jump back and forth in time and find everything that I talked about. Let us know in the comment section what would you like us to cover next time on this series. Click on the link in the description or the join button to become a member if you want to work on future projects with us and see the whole design or illustration process live. Thanks a lot for watching. Like and share this video if you enjoyed it. Have fun learning, guys, and I will see you in the next one.